Hi, my name's Ben. I'm from Brisbane, Australia. 43 years old. So I found out I was donor conceived last year in 2024. I'm on today with my sister Katy, who pretty much found out at the same time. Katy?
Hi, I'm Katy Bernays and I'm from the Gold Coast, Australia. And yeah, I'm donor conceived and I found out last year at the age of 40 years old. So it's been a wild year for the both of us, to say the least.
I bet. I bet.
Yeah.
So yeah, one of you dive into how this all came to be and how it's factoring into your life now.
So I guess,
Katy, take the lead.
yeah. So I guess for us, we had a bit of a different journey. At the age of 14, good old year 9 biology, realised that two blue-eyed people can't make a brown-eyed baby. My parents have blue eyes, I have brown. So that afternoon, I've got a very science medical mind. So that afternoon I was like, getting out this textbook and I'm hitting up mum and I'm asking, this doesn't make sense. So I was 14. I asked her, am I adopted? Because today I learned in biology that, this is the case with two blue-eyed, can't make a brown-eyed. And hello, here I am. I've got very brown eyes. And she said, no, you're not adopted. Your granddad has brown eyes and so does your auntie. That was the end of the conversation. I was 14. I never questioned it again, consciously. Nose, smile, eyes, there's a lot of differences that I have that I can't see anywhere else in the family. Subconsciously a lot, I'd be like, oh, that doesn't match. And then consciously never really raised the question again in my head enough to ask our parents. Or Benny didn't even know that I ever asked that question, which at the time, it must have just been mum and I in the kitchen. I remember being in the kitchen. So fast forward, I guess, 26 years. And last year, my dad had said a few things. So our parents, where I was 7, Benny was 10 when they split. But last year, separately, they were saying a few different things. Like my dad one day at the beach was like, something about a secret he's taking to the grave. And I don't even know what conversation we were in. But I remember saying to him, look, you don't ever have to take anything to the grave. If you ever want to chat, you just let me know I'm here. And he kind of held my gaze for a few seconds and then went off and, played with our dog. And that was it. And then around that time, within a few months kind of thing, I think it was, my mum was saying, if she goes and gets, a healing session with a friend of mine, what happens if something comes up? And I was like, oh, it's patient confidentiality. And that person you're talking of is a very ethical practitioner. And then I was kind of like, mum and I like super close. So I was like, what is going to come up that she's going to say in a healing session that I don't know? And I was like, and so I don't even remember going to my mum's to ask this question, but we were driving along and I was like, Dad said this the other day. Do you know what he's talking about? And then it just clicked in my head. They're both talking about something. And I was like, hang on, is this related? And she was like, yeah, possibly. And I said, is it to do with me? She was like, yeah. And I was like, and to do with Ben? And she's like, yes. And I was like, oh. So in my head, I was like, well, we can't both be adopted. That's odd. So I was like, in terms of, I'd seen pregnant photos of her. And so I was like, oh. And then she did say, if the two of you are to find out, it will be your father, myself, and the two of you in the same room. And regretfully, I didn't just shut my mouth in that moment and say, tomorrow, get the 4 of us in the room together. Instead, I was super impatient and a bit like in shock that there was some big secret that I said, we are adopted. She's like, no. And then I was like, we're IVF. And she's like, no, IVF wasn't around when you guys were born. And I was like, are we from a donor sperm? Is Dad infertile? And I've never ever thought that. And then bang, she was white, grey, and she started crying. And I was like, what? And I was like, do we know the sperm donor? Because Ben and I, we've got like lots of really close family friends. And we're like, oh my gosh, it's kind of come out of the woodworks that, so-and-so is our actual genetic father. And she said, no, it was anonymous sperm donors from the university. And so that was about it. I dropped her back home to her house. We were out kind of like shopping, dropped her back home. I drove back about an hour and a half to my house. And on the way, I rang 2 of my good friends and was like, oh my gosh. And I got home and I remember saying to my husband, just come into the room. And I closed the room and the door and told him, he was like, oh, well, it doesn't really change anything. And I was like, oh, what I'm feeling right now changes a lot. And then he was going out to play golf with his mate. And he's like, do you mind if I still go? I was like, yeah, go. And I'd planned with the kids to go and watch a movie. And the movies we were going to was like licensed. So I was like, I'm having a glass of rosé. I don't know what movie I watched, but I remember just watching the screen, blanking out. Kids were happy. They had their popcorn. And I don't remember the rest of that night. And at that time, Ben didn't know. So that was a stressful time. And my mum and dad weren't talking at the time. They'd had a bit of a falling out. So mum left it up to me to tell dad that I knew and mediate how they would then tell Ben. And so it was about a week later that I had a chance to go to my dad's. He lives about an hour and a half away from where I am. And yeah, it was stressful. Like, I didn't really want to be the child. I didn't want to be the parent in that situation. I wanted to be the child and I wanted them to take care of it. But it wasn't going to happen unless, I chatted to dad. So a week, I think it was 8 days later, I was driving to my dad's, and I'll maybe let you interject, Benny.
And I guess this is where my part of the story starts, Nick and audience. So yeah, Katy was on her way to our father's house or our dad's house, unbeknownst to me, just having a normal Sunday afternoon or day. And it was probably about 11 o'clock in the morning. And my stepdad called me up, which was quite unusual because he doesn't usually call me. We just usually converse when I'm on the phone with my mum and, video talk, etc. So anyway, he gives me a call and says, "Oh, your mum's going to pop around in a couple of hours. She's on her way back from your sister's house and she's got something important to talk with you about. And she wants to talk with you in person." I said, "Okay." It's quite strange. I said, "Is everything okay?" And he just said, "Yeah, your mum will talk with you when she arrives." So I got back to my day, gardening, cooking, cleaning, etc. And then a couple of hours later, it must have been about 3 o'clock in the afternoon, my mum arrives, kind of hurriedly scurries my daughter off in front of the TV. We need to go out the back and close all the doors because, we can't let my daughter hear this. My mum keeps saying. I was like, what on earth is... I immediately went to health concerns. I was like, okay, someone's not well and, this is obviously going to be a bit of a stressful situation. And then we're sitting out the back around our back table and mum just literally comes out. I'm like, what's this about? And mum just literally comes out and says, "Your father's not your father." And then, boom, my world just went into slow motion. It was very surreal. When I found that out, I kind of said to her, "What do you mean my father's not your father? Not my father?" And she said, "Oh, look, we tried to conceive for a couple of years. We weren't having any luck. I'd had a heap of tests done. So that obviously tried to start conceiving in like the late 70s, around 78, I think. And they tried for a couple of years until the doctors then went and tested my father or my dad. And yeah, they figured out that he was infertile due to mumps as a boy. So she explained this to me. I was just kind of spinning uncontrollably at that stage. I remember getting up to finish the can of Coke and getting up to walk across to the bin to put it in the bin. And it felt like I was so heavy. I'd just completely weighed down. It felt like it took me 10 minutes to walk 10 meters to the bin and back to my chair. It was just, it was surreal. Then Katy called my mum going, I'm saying, I'm on my way to Dad's house to talk to Dad about this and let him know that I know. And mum said, I'm actually at Ben's and I've just told him here. And she kind of threw the phone into my hands, and I was just, I honestly didn't know what to say. And I was just kind of like, everything in my head's going, holy crap, Katy's like a half sister. And again, regrettably, I said this now, but this is my twisted black sense of humor. And I got on the phone to Katy and I said, "Hey, half sis." And she just kind of like was in tears. I think because of what mum had told her that mum had told me, and Katy was a bit disappointed in the fact that it hadn't gone the way that her and mum had kind of talked about it. She was going to speak to Dad. And but I think it might have possibly been that I just called her a half sister 2 minutes after finding out this information. And I was like, "I'm so sorry, Katy, I don't know why I said that, but I don't understand what's going on right now." I'm like, "Is this some kind of sick joke that you and mum are playing? I mean, what's going on?" And she's in tears. Like, I could tell that it wasn't a joke at this stage because Katy was just inconsolable. I just said to her, "Look, you need to take a breath and drive to our house." So Katy, I'll let you jump in there.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think it was, I was inconsolable because we'd talked that morning, mum and I, about, I had said, can you please go to dad? But it was still a no for her. And so it was then agreed that morning, I'm still going to dad's. I'll see what he says, let him know I know. And how can Ben then find out? Ideally, mum and dad in the same room with them would be great. And then to be driving, on the M1, which is a massive highway, and find out that, I don't know, I felt, what's the word, let down or disregarded, betrayed, all of that.
Mhm.
And I had a level of rage. I cannot think of another time that I had that amount of rage in me. I feel like I just felt like dad was let down as well. Like dad had a right to be a part of that conversation with Benny.
Yeah.
And I felt let down for him. And I just felt like, you want to keep everyone together and think of everyone else in this situation, yet it didn't feel like any of that was kind of working out.
Mhm.
So I rocked up to Benny's. I rocked up to Benny's pretty rageful, Ben.
Yeah, when Katy arrived, she wasn't a happy lass. She was a little bit. She was quite disappointed with mum and the route that mum had decided to take. Mum
Mhm.
felt it was best coming from her. To me, Katy felt, and as I look back at it now, I completely agree. I really felt my dad should have been a part of that conversation as well with myself. He unfortunately wasn't there for Katy. Katy kind of guessed it and picked it out of mum, but at that stage, dad didn't know. He obviously knew we were donor conceived. Him and mum made that decision 40 odd years ago, but he didn't know that we knew at that stage, or that Katy knew. So it would have been good for him to come into that. So Katy arrived, got a bit heated between her and mum. They just, there was some words said, about, the method of me finding out, and Katy was disappointed. Etc. And then mum kind of just pretty much bailed and then left it up to Katy and myself to go and speak to our father about it. So, Katy?
Yeah, I was just going to say, I guess that's where it comes back to, I really regret the way I talked to my mum in that moment, but bringing it back to, I really regret when I was in the car with her having that conversation in the car park of a shopping centre, that when she said, if you were ever to find out, it would be the four of us in the same room. I really, if we could have hindsight and rewind, I would have just said, yes, get the four of us in the room, because everything that followed on from that would never have happened. We've all learned a lot in the last year about managing each other's situations and emotions and, listening to each other and, me reacting less.
But I will say, once you kind of know something's in the air, at least for me, it's kind of hard to just pretend like, that's not there.
Yeah.
The inquisitive nature kind of kicks in and it's like, wait a minute.
Yeah.
Something big is here and I don't really know what it is. I got to figure it out,
And then that's the thing, you're so correct. And Benny will say this is like, I can't have a secret or a surprise. Like I need to know everything yesterday, much to my husband's pain. And for me, and that's what Benny and I have spoken about a lot of times, 26 years passed and, how on earth did I miss this? And like, I'm such a, I don't know, my brain is very science minded. And I was like, how on earth did I miss this enough that I wasn't ever to question it again and be okay not to ask the question about my brown eyes again? And that's, like you said, when you really think something's up, it's really hard to sit still and not ask.
Yeah, very much so. Katy's driven like that. If she gets a bee in a bonnet and she wants to know something, she'll find it out. And I'm very much driven like that in a sense as well, Nick. Like, yeah. Anyway, as you'll hear later in the episode as we go a bit further into it.
Got it. Okay, so your mom's side of the story is, it's out there now. You've discussed this with her. How does your dad come into the picture?
So
how do you break it to him that
So mum left and pretty much left it up to Katy and I to go and speak to dad. I said to Katy, look, at the time I said, look, I think it's best this way. I think it's best that both of us sit down with dad and explain it to him.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. So anyway, we jumped in our cars. Katy had already organised to have dinner with dad that night as she was on her way up here. But then I arrived with Katy and I think it threw my dad off a little bit. And my stepmother, she was kind of like, oh, okay, what are you guys both doing here? We just kind of broke into it. They were sitting in the lounge room watching TV, and we said, we need to talk about something. And they're like, yeah, what's up? And I just kind of reached for the remote control of the TV and turned the TV off. And like at that stage, I think they realized, this is something quite serious. And my stepmom said, look, I'll leave and leave you guys talk. It's obviously a family thing. And we said, no, you stay, your family. You've been part of this family for 20 odd years. You need to be part of this conversation as well. And then, both Katy and I kind of looked at each other, and I was like, how do we start, Katy? And Katy just went into the whole spiel about just, letting Dad know that, with regards to his talking about secrets, and she spoke to Mum about it. And then she, got it out of Mum, and then Mum had come and told me. And Dad was just kind of sitting there, head spinning, not really, or trying to take it in and understand it at that stage. I think he had buried it so deep, that secret so deep, that he'd almost forgotten it himself in a sense. And, like you repress a memory, because back in the 80s, the doctors, our parents were told by the doctors that, you go home, you just have sex, and there's a high possibility that it'll be your child, and you don't speak about this procedure with anyone, with your child or anything like that. It's best for all parties in that sense. So I think in a sense, that's what he did, so he was just kind of spinning. I remember looking across at my stepmom, and she just kind of looked at Katy and I and Dad, and Katy and I were on either side of Dad at that stage, and she was on the other side of the couch, and she just kind of looked at us, and she's like, I don't understand what all this is. What's going on? And
she didn't know.
My dad, no, she didn't know. And my dad, to his credit, I started to kind of try and explain it to her again. And my dad, to his credit, just jumped in and took over, explained it to her. She it clicked with her at that stage. Then it was a bit of an emotional roller coaster. We talked with Dad and Katy and my stepmom for probably 2 or 3 hours about it all. Katy then ended up staying on there. She stayed at Dad's and then drove home back to the coast the next day. She was best because she probably wasn't in the state for a long drive late at night. And then, I got up the next morning and went to work, and I got to work and then had a breakdown. My dad called me, and right as I was sitting down at my desk, and I went to a meeting room and just had a complete breakdown on the phone to him. It all kind of settled in then. The night before, when I got home, I'd gone into a mad rabbit hole about researching. So I was looking at, the Google machine in there, Brisbane, donor conceived. What does it mean? What is donor conceived? I'd never really thought of it prior to that, Nick. I understood what donor conceived was, but I'd never really thought much more than the words, if you know what I mean. So I went on a massive rabbit hole that night, looking into what it is, etc., finding all of these articles to do with the local donor conceived industry here in Brisbane, Australia. Read half a dozen really good articles about the donors, about donor conceived children, and about the recipient parents. But so I got to work the next day and had kind of a bit of a breakdown. Like, I walked out, my boss looked at me and she's like, "You okay?" And I'm like, "No." And I pretty much told her, and she's like, "Pack your bags and go home, and you just take what time you need, mate. This is something that's going to take a little while to process, and we understand it." So I'm very blessed in the sense that my workplace was very supportive in giving me the space and time that I needed to process that.
Mm-hmm.
It was a tough week. It was a tough few weeks, because it was after we found out Katy spends time between Australia and Mexico. And Katy was just about to take off to Mexico. So it was kind of like the family kind of felt like it was falling apart, wasn't it, Katy?
Yeah. And I actually felt really guilty about that. And Benny and I spoke for hours most nights in those first 6 months, really. And I actually felt really guilty. And I've said that to Benny a few times, is he had a week off work and straight back into it. He's got full-time work and a busy job. And I got to go to Mexico for 3 months with my husband and kids. And I felt guilty being there. And really, I thought, it'd be a good time to process stuff. I realised when I got back 3 months later to Australia and saw family, and, a week or two later, Benny found out about his donor and siblings. I realised I did no healing or processing in that 3 months. I think I just increased my, tequila intake, really, or mezcal intake, to a point where, I'm not a big drinker, but that was the first time ever in my 40 years of life that I have chosen to drink to numb the emotions, which was a big, I'm talking like 2 or 3 margaritas at a time, a couple of times a week. That was me kind of like, but I was doing it to be like, I'll have another one, then I can sleep better tonight and not be like up all night rattling my brain about this situation we're in. And I think as well, that was the time where my children would see me crying, which is unusual. And I'd be like, the onions, or there was something I was watching on Instagram, so sad, or I had to make up all these excuses, and it kind of led into Benny and I working out. At first Ben was like, I think we should tell the kids when they're older. My daughter is the youngest, maybe we do it when she turns a certain age and we do it all together. And then quite quickly I was like, I feel like I need to tell. My daughter was 10 then, and my son 7. And I was like, oh, my daughter, she knows something's going on. She's onto something. I feel like I need to tell at least her sooner. And it was probably a week or so later where Ben's like, you're right. We're otherwise, and I think we both said at the same time, we're kind of carrying on another withholding of truth in another generation. Like, there's nothing wrong with this. Poppy's still their Poppy, as is their stepdad still their pa, and he's still our father, he's still our dad. But the genetics are just not there, and that's okay. So we quite quickly agreed, yep, it's time to tell the kids. And we told the kids kind of around the same time. Hey, Benny?
Yeah, well, yeah, that you kind of jumped a little bit, Kate. So you left to Mexico, and when you left, we discussed about getting DNA tests and said, yeah, we'll do a DNA test when you get back, because we kind of I felt, all right, this is a journey that we're walking on together as brother and sister. So we agreed to that. She shot to Mexico, and about 6 weeks in, Nick, it got the better of me. I just was every night. It was consuming in a sense, Nick. Every night I was on looking at things, and I just hit a point and I went, I need to know. If I miss the opportunity to meet my donor to get the information that I kind of am looking for, I think I'd have some regrets. So I sheepishly called Katy and said, explained my worries to her and said, look, I'm sorry, but I can't wait to do a DNA test anymore. I need to do them. Funnily enough, they were on sale right before Father's Day. This is Ancestry and all of the DNA testing sites seem to have sales at the odd times a year. And I don't know, it's kind of like, do they do this on purpose to kind of,
well,
ruin
Nick,
families in a sense? Well, no, not really. But
sorry, can I interject there, Benny? Nick, didn't you get yours as a Christmas present off your sister-in-law and brother?
I got it as a birthday
gift. Okay.
And then, my parents, or I should say, my parents, they knew that I was about to be given this gift. And that's what made them say, all right, like, we have to have a conversation. He can't find out through the test. He's got to hear it from us directly. So that's how it worked out for me. But I do have a question for you both. It sounds like there was an understanding prior to either of you taking the DNA test that you were half siblings, not from the same donor.
Yes. So one of the first questions that we asked Mum was, are we from the same donor? And she said, unfortunately, the clinic at that stage had advised that the donor that they used to create myself wasn't available anymore and wasn't donating anymore. So they weren't able to provide that to our parents. So Katy, at that stage, I didn't want to have a feeling, didn't want to think that way. But in your gut, you're like, okay, we're half siblings at that stage. So Katy, you were about to say something?
I was just saying the clinics, as we know, a lot of immoral, unethical stuff happened. And at the time, it is known that that same donor was donating prolific amount of times.
Yeah. So I'll touch on that in a sec because I'm just about to that point of the story. But so we did the DNA test. Katy pretty much said to me, "Oh, well, look, I'm going to order one too," and she got it sent to my address. And she's like, "When I get back in Australia, I'm driving from the airport to your house, Benny, and I'm getting that test. The first thing I'm doing is spitting in that tube and posting it off," which she pretty much did. So she arrived back into Australia early October. I think it was around the 3rd of October or the 4th of October. And on the 9th of October, which was 4 months to the day since I'd found out, so I'd found out on June the 9th, and on the 9th of October, I opened up my Facebook just to check Facebook like I do. A few weeks earlier, I'd found some groups on Facebook, some donor conceived groups, and I'd been in there asking some questions, and there was a few people that commented on them, and there was a message from one of them on one of my posts. "Oh, Ben, check your DMs or your private messages." So I checked it, and it was from this lady by the name of Kerry, who'd put some posts on my, put some comments on my posts in there. And she said, "Oh, have you got your DNA results back? I'm happy to help with things if you need." And I said, "Oh, no, not yet." And she encouraged me to check Ancestry, because she said, "Oh, sometimes they don't email you the slot machines, It's kind of like, oh, okay, well, this is good news, And then clicked onto your family, and bang, first thing there is father, 50% DNA. And then I look down and I'm like, start counting, and I'm like, 1, 2, oh my God, I'm one of 11 donor conceived siblings. Like, this was wild. And then there was a message in there, and I clicked on the message, and it was from Kerry. She was one of my half sisters.
Wow. So she sensed, just from seeing your Facebook profile, that you could be part of the group?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Wow.
she showed her husband a photo of me, because she trawled through my Facebook and Googled me a bit and got some photos of me, and she showed her husband, and he straight away said, "Yeah, he's one of the group, he's one of the pod."
That's wild.
She fanned it out to a couple of the other siblings in our pod, and they all agreed. They said, "Yeah, he's one of them." Looking back on it now, I think 2 or 3 of my sisters had actually commented on the posts. They knew before I knew it even got my results back because I talked about the doctor that I was conceived under, the clinic, the time period, and everything like that. So I get this message from Kerry, and I just immediately just see a phone number, and I don't read much of the message. I just call the phone number straight away and talk to her, and it was a very, I felt very elated at that stage, like that I finally found the answers that I was looking for, and I was so relieved in a sense. I was elated that I'd kind of gained all of this new family and all of these new siblings. It was wonderful, and I was relieved that I'd gotten access finally to that information. In a sense, I was blessed that Kerry was the first one to find the donor. She'd put in years and years of effort to find him, many years. She found out when she was 13 years old and only located him. She's a year younger than me, so I think she's an 82 baby. And so she found him out in the 90s, and she'd put in many, many years and countless hours piecing together the puzzle through Ancestry, and tracked the donor down through a 4th cousin in America, actually.
Mm-hmm.
And tracked down. So I felt blessed that she'd done all of the hard work for me, Nick. I jumped on there, and she was just kind of like, "Here's everything on a silver platter for you." I couldn't have gotten luckier in a sense. I talked to Kerry. The next couple of days was spent messaging back and forth, and then by the Sunday, on the Sunday, we decided to meet up. So I kind of had told Katy this. As soon as I got off the phone to Kerry, I phoned Katy. I was like, "My results are in. I've just spoken to my half sister. This is wild, Katy. This is wild."
And also sorry, Benny, I was just going to interject. We had known of Kerry and who her donor is, because as soon as you Google our clinic in Australia in Brisbane, and then Courier Mail, which is our major newspaper, their faces come up as the major front page article. There's about 10 articles written, and they're one of the ones that are repeatedly in all these articles. And so when Ben's like, "Yeah, that's my sister and that's the donor," we all knew straight away who it was, because it's always at one stage was in the paper a few years ago.
Yeah. And that was the wild thing, Nick, is that first night that I found out on the 9th of June, the first article that I read had my donor and my half sister on the front page of the paper, on the newspaper. And 3/4 of those articles were all about my parents' donor, my biological father, and my sister. It was wild, Nick. It was wild. It felt, again, it was a shift in reality, in my own reality, in a sense. I was just kind of like, this is so surreal right now. Like, is this happening? Anyway, we met up on the Sunday, and one of my half brothers come along as well. It was amazing. We got a little bit of a shock, because we started talking about schools, and we realized that we went to the same school together. We were only 2 years apart. So
you're passing each other in the hallways, unknowingly.
Yeah.
Very much so. Yeah. I don't know what kept us apart. But thank goodness the universe just kept us on different paths in life, and we never crossed paths in school. So yeah, it was because I think that's one of our biggest fears. Yeah. So, but yeah, it was crazy because that article talked about the donor and donating. He was donating 3 times a week for 5 years. When we spoke to my brother and sister that day, we figured out that I was the oldest, so I'd almost put an 11-month extension on his donating history, because at that stage, the half brother that I met that day, he didn't.
He was the
Yeah,
eldest.
so yeah, it was wild to think that this donor had. I did a bit of math in my head, and I was like, holy smokes, this guy's donated about 960 times over a period of 6 years. Like, this is wild. It starts to play on you about how many siblings do you have out there, you know?
Right.
Yeah, I've got 11 known at this stage. Well, 12 now. I've had a new one pop up earlier this year. But yeah, it's wild. How many are there out there?
Yeah. And it's an indefinite thing, right? You'll never really know the true answer, which creates this air of mystery in our lives that, you know, it's always going to be there. Quick question on the newspaper articles. When you saw those, you had not known that you were related to those people, right? So did you get any sense when you were looking at that? Like, oh, wait a minute, these could be people I'm related to. Hindsight's always 20/20.
Yeah, in a way, looking back at it now, I kind of looked at Kerry. I remember looking at Kerry and thinking, wow, what an amazing woman to have gone through all of this, you know, and it just, I don't know, every corner that I turned and every article that I kind of flicked into with regards to that, she was involved in it. She's had a massive involvement in the donor-conceived industry and pushing for change in legislation in our state here, Queensland, Australia. So she was very much connected to all of these. So in a sense, I was kind of like, I don't know whether it was because she was such a big part of the industry and she was just everywhere, or whether there was that connection in a sense, Nick. It's strange looking back at it now, but yeah, it's
Crazy stuff.
It is.
So it's interesting here that you're both on this journey together in many ways, but it's where the story goes is different because you come from different donors. So Ben, we got a little bit of background, or at least a little bit of a peek into like how you uncovered who your donor was. Katy, how did that play out on your end? Have you discovered who the donor is, and what does that look like for you?
So mine was a bit more of an agonizing wait. So, you know, as soon as I got back from Mexico, we drove to Benny's house, got the test, and I literally sent it off the next morning. I was so eager to find out by that stage. Whereas initially, you know, Benny was the one going, let's do ancestry. And I was like, yeah, I think I'm up to that stage. But yeah, by the time I got back from Mexico, I was like, let's do this. And then, you know, about 5 weeks later, I get an email saying that your DNA can't be extracted. If you'd like another test, we'll send you another test. So I was like, okay. So I got another test sent and sent it off again. And it was just, I was like, oh no, I really thought November I would know something. So anyway, I was supposed to find out just after Christmas. I was actually been up at Benny's house for Christmas get together, and my husband and I and the kids had stayed the night. And I remember the next morning coming out of the bathroom, checking my phone quickly. I was like, oh, and my heart just I don't know, just sank. And I walked into Ben and I was like, I just got another email from Ancestry. They can't extract my DNA. Like I was supposed to, you know, estimated date was supposed to be today or tomorrow. And Ben's like, oh, and straight away, because Kerry, his half-sister, is such a knowledgeable lady and just really kind and giving with her knowledge. I was like, maybe I asked Kerry, like, what am I doing wrong? Or like, am I an alien? I don't know. Like, what has this happened before? Like, anyway, so I ended up, we text her, I think, didn't we, Ben? And she was like, look, give it another go, or, you know, anyway, she gave me some tips. So for anyone out there that hasn't done one, don't do it first thing in the morning. And then she said as well, you know, chew the inside of your cheeks before you spit, so there's actually DNA there, you know. And I don't know, like I think I chewed the inside of my cheeks so hard trying to make sure that this damn third test bloody worked. And and then it was just before Christmas, just before New Year's that I sent it off. So everyone who had got one for Christmas, you know, blah, blah, blah. So it wasn't until March that I found out. So it was like 5.5 months since sending the first test off that I got the results. And I'd been looking every day that week. And then I finally opened up the computer one morning and I saw an email and it said, your ancestry results are ready. And I was taking the kids to school and I was like, oh my gosh. So I quickly opened it and I saw father linked and a few siblings, and that's all I got to. And so I dropped the kids off like really quickly, scooted.
Did you even stop the car?
Yeah, like tuck and roll.
You'll be right. And so they jumped out of the car quickly and I zoomed, and I was meeting a good friend of mine for a walk, but I'm like, oh, I don't care if I'm 10, 15 minutes late. She'll understand. I need to call Benny. So I pulled over the side of the road and I was like, hey, I'm going to like log into it as we're chatting. And then we had a name and there was 6 siblings. 5 are donor conceived and one of the sisters on there, one of the half sisters, is the donor's daughter. So that was all on there. And I quickly realized that one of the donor's account was managed by the same person as one of the brothers' accounts. And his full name was on there. And I kind of was like, oh, I'll go check if he's in these, Australian Facebook groups that we're in that are donor conceived. And his name came up and he'd been, quite present in there a few years ago. So I was like, okay, he knows he's donor conceived. He's in there. So I'm not going to be dropping a bombshell on him. And whoever manages his account, which is actually his mum, manages the donor's account. So I voice messaged my half brother and was like, hey, I've just found out I'm, related, probably from the same donor. I'm on Ancestry. This is my name. This is where I live. This is where I grew up. This is what I do. And this is my family. If you ever want to share any information or have anything, to share, let me know. This is all really weird. I don't know where to go from here, but I'm here if you ever want to chat. And then I quickly sent the message before I chickened out. And within I think the message went for 3 minutes. And within 4.5 minutes, he was calling. And I was like, oh. And so we chatted for an hour and he gave me this whole rundown. This is the donor and he's got 4 children and you got 5 other siblings and these are who they are and when's your birth date? And, it took mum about 3 years on Ancestry to find out. We kind of found out, I think they found out 2019, 2020. I think. And before me, maybe 10 months earlier was the most recent sibling before me. And so we chatted and he was like, look, I'll let the team know there's another one. And are you happy for me to pass the information on? I said, yeah, I'm happy to chat with whoever wants to chat. I know we're all on different journeys, no pressure. And that day, about an hour and a half later, the donor called. And
whoa, okay.
Yeah. And I had a voice message from him. And then I got home and I gave him a call back and we chatted for 20 minutes. He told me his story. He was a veterinary student. He was actually, this is where it gets a bit disappointing with how the clinics were run. And I know it's the same in America, UK, Canada, Australia. They all kind of run on the same business model, unfortunately. Was a veterinary student doing his PhD in koala infertility. And at the time, they were looking at freezing and thawing of sperm. So he was donating his sperm for research only for freezing and thawing of sperm. If it worked for that, they were then going to try and do their PhD in freezing and thawing of koala sperm and work on the fertility issues that the koala population have, blah, blah, blah. He never knew, apparently, that it was going towards conception of children until 4 or 5 years ago when he got a phone call from one of the half siblings saying, I think you might be the donor. So yeah, he's very accepting of it. His wife is, all his children have, it's probably not easy for them. I haven't spoken to any of them, but I imagine it's not easy, but they're also not against, us at all. And I know some of the siblings have caught up with some of the donors' children. So yeah, that's kind of, my thing was I just would love a photo and any medical history.
Right.
And I got that. And yeah, there's some of the sisters and I, there's 3 other donor conceived sisters and we've got a little Facebook group called Sisters from the Same Mister.
Yeah. So in your case, your donor or the donor was blindsided by this also, didn't realize that this was a possibility.
Yeah. I think it's kind of they mustn't have had any fresh sperm that day and they've gone to the research clinic, got what they could, and hence why I've got brown eyes. And actually Ben has a B positive blood type, which isn't possible with 2 O positive parents. And that was not really raised until we never worked that bit out until now in hindsight. Yeah.
That's the thing, is sometimes there's clues that have been out there from the earliest times, and we just, even if we question them, they get overlooked in ways that we never knew would come back to kind of be, the clues that could have opened up this whole thing and let us know about these parts of ourselves at an earlier time.
Yeah.
So let's talk about the donors for both of you. I'll start with you, Ben. Have you met your donor? Have you had any engagement with him? To what degree is he present or not present in your life? How has that all played out on your end?
Yeah, so blessed in a sense, after meeting my half-brother and sister that first weekend after finding out my donor results, I'd met up with my half-brother a couple of times as he just works around the corner from me in the city. So that was really good to be able to chat with him further about it. And it was about on our second or third meeting, I conveyed to him my want to actually meet the donor and whether the donor would be open to it. My half-brother is in constant contact with the donor. He catches up with him weekly. They've kind of formed quite a lovely bond and relationship together. So I pretty much, said to my half-brother, "What do you think?" And he goes, "Yeah, of course, here's his number. Just give him a call at some stage." And yeah, have a chat to him. And if you want to meet him, I'm sure he'd be open to meeting him in person. Yeah, I left lunch that day. I think my half-brother messaged the donor straight away and said, "Oh, I've just passed on Ben's details. You might get a phone call from him." I went back to work. I think I got about 20 minutes into my work afternoon and I just it was just consuming me, Nick, and I just excused myself. I just said, "Look, guys, sorry, I've got to make a phone call. It might be 10, 15 minutes. So just shot off to a meeting room, gave the donor a call. Quite an emotional phone call. To hear his voice, to, just talk with your biological father. Yeah, it was quite cathartic in a sense, settling. So yeah, I had a chat to him and then organised, that was on a Thursday, and organised to meet up with him on the Sunday. So on the Sunday, I rocked around there I think it was about 10 in the morning. He invited me to his house, which was a lovely gesture to open his doors and his arms essentially to me. So went around there, and just that moment of seeing him for the first time, Nick, like I'd seen him photos in the paper. I was blessed in a sense because I had a paper trail that I could follow with all of the articles that he'd done. In a sense, he does advocate for a lot more openness in the donor conception industry. So I'm blessed in a sense there, and he is very open to having contact and answering people's questions. So, but yeah, just being able to arriving and looking at his face, looking at him in the eyes, and finally having that sense of mirroring. I know in the donor conception industry, if you're donor conceived, you probably have heard the sense mirroring when you look at your parents and you can see yourself in them, and I never realized at that stage that my dad that raised me never looked at him and not seen myself in him. But over those past few months, I'd caught myself spending way too long having a shave, looking at myself in the mirror in the mornings. You're brushing your teeth and you're kind of looking at yourself in the mirror going, where am I from? Where am I from? And that day it settled in a sense, Nick, because I had those answers and it just flowed. The conversation just flowed when I spoke to the donor. He's a lovely man. He's a doctor. He's got 3 children to the relationships that he's had on top of the 12 known donor conceived now. On top of that, I had Katy and my 2 stepbrothers. So I went from being one of 3 or one of 4 to being one of 18. It kind of blows your mind. And it's a great conversation starter when you're at parties these days.
Yep.
But yes, it was, it was wild. But he's a really nice guy. He was open to answering all my questions and open for whatever further contact that I wanted.
Mm-hmm.
In my mind, that's all I needed. I just needed that one meeting with him and to get those answers, that medical history, to get that sense of self in a way that you do when you meet your donor and you see that person in the flesh and you can see where you come from. It was kind of scary in a way. I was like, I looked at him, but in a good way. I looked at him and I was like, wow, I can see myself in 30 years now, this is, I'm going to look partly like this man in 30 years time, I can see where I get certain things with regards to when I sit down, certain postures, etc. He was sitting in a chair, both sitting in chairs out the front of his house. And it was just kind of I was like, oh my God, that's where I get that posture from. And that's where I get that kind of little set, little kind of, little tick from, in a sense, Nick. It was, it was good. But after that meeting, I haven't talked to him again. I'm getting to the point where I kind of feel like I want to go and have another meeting with him and sit down and chat with him a little bit further about things. I suppose working myself up to that. It's a big step. I feel like I love my dad that brought me up. He's an amazing man. He gave up so much both him and my mother gave up so much of their lives to bring us up and do the right thing by us. So I love him, and I kind of feel like I'm torn in a sense, Nick, that I feel like I'm cheating on my dad in a sense. If I go to speak with them, my dad is very open and says, you got to do whatever you want to do. He's very supportive in that sense. But yeah, there's just something deep down that kind of eats at me a little bit, that I feel like if I go to the donor and speak with the donor, I'm kind of betraying my dad in a sense, like it's difficult, but in a sense I want to as well. So yeah, but I'm at the point now where I've come to the fact that my dad's okay with it and he's supportive about it. He knows that he's not going to be replaced by the donor. The donor helped our family, helped my parents create a family, and that was a wonderful thing. But yeah, it's I don't know. You've met your donor, Nick?
I have not. No. In fact, I haven't had any direct contact with him. So
yeah,
there's only one email that came to one of my half sisters, who he basically outlined, the medical history and the ancestry history, but that's it. So, I think it's wonderful that you have options, it sounds like, where, you've got the donor who's willing to meet and, share things about himself. You've got the father who raised you, who seems comfortable enough with you pursuing this if needed. So I'm curious, Katy, how has your experience been with respect to, being able to meet your donor or not?
Yeah, so I got the photo that I wanted, and, as much medical history as what he had. And we had one other conversation. He rang actually and just said, I think it's about time that you're going to Mexico. I'm just ringing. My family and I wish you a great trip, blah, blah, blah. So just a really quick kind of like 5-10 minute conversation. And that was really nice. And occasionally he will message and just give photos of his family, and one's about to get married, and just photos of updates like that occasionally. But more so with the 3 donor conceived sisters, I haven't met my donor, and if the opportunity came up, that would be amazing. But it's probably would be really, I think, healing in a way to see the person that half of your genetics come from. But the blessing for me is the 3 donor conceived sisters. Like, I met one of them who lives about an hour from where I live. The other 2 live quite a while away. But her name's Kate, and we grew up, it's like half an hour away from each other our whole lives. And it's quite funny, in that little chat group, we're all so similar, and we send each other these memes. And one of them put a photo up in a separate chat, which is her and I talking about like always bare feet, and she had her feet up, and she took a photo of like her with her feet up, and we were just texting about random stuff. And I was like, hang on a minute, I just zoomed in on your feet. We have the same feet. Like, look at your 4th toe and your 5th toe. Like, look at mine. And we're sending like, toe pictures to each other, which sounds creepy. But then I went across.
The similarities really come in all shapes and sizes.
Right. And then I went across to the sisters chat, and I was like, okay, this is really creepy and odd. I'm just going to ask it. No need to, oblige. But can you guys send some feet photos? Because look at mine and Julia's. And it's funny. It's funny because when you say, hindsight of like little things that you might have back in the day, you didn't read anything more into, but now it seems obvious. Mum used to say all the time to me, oh, look at your Yeti feet. I don't know where you got them from. And now I'm like, I know where I got them from. They all have the same feet as me. Like, and I think that's the thing is like, I really think, and I think Benny, you agree, is that Mum and Dad, like that, they were amazing parents, and are amazing parents, but they suppressed this so much that like my mum had told my stepdad around the same time I asked if I was adopted. I imagine that would have rattled her. My dad had told no one. So like no one knew about this except for 3 of our parents. And they suppressed it so much. And I don't know if that's a way of dealing with it or a combination of the clinic really told them not to tell us. It's better off we don't know. And then as we get older, it becomes easier not to tell us, because I remember mum saying, I just thought if you guys ever found out, you would hate me. You would hate us. And I was like, no. And I know I read your book, Nick, and I remember you kind of mentioning, would I really wanted to know as a teenager? And I kind of agreed with that. Is like, I know Ben says he would rather have known. And I kind of go, like, at least when I found out, I had my husband, my soulmate, I had my 2 beautiful children, career, life was all set up. I knew who I was. There was no self-identity issues. But would I want to find out at 14? And then, like you were saying, when you want to know the answers to something, I was kind of going to touch back on that, is had I known when I was 14, or had we found out, there's another situation that would have been really relevant to find out on, and I can touch on that later. But is any of those times that would have been great to find out, and ideally as a baby, as a newborn, it always being your story is the ideal. And that's what Ben and I advocate for. If there's any parents out there who haven't told their children, tell them, because the earlier the better. And the thing is that would I have wanted to know at a time when there was no answers of who the donor or the siblings were? Because pre-2019, my half-brother and his mum, who did all the hard work, there was no knowledge of that. So that would have eaten at me big time. And maybe we've got similar personalities where I could not know or not have ways to find answers. So finding out when I did, when mum and dad were still alive, where we could chat stuff through, was great. But yeah, the other time that would have been great is when my son was about 8, 9, 10 months old, was hospitalized, was quite ill. They didn't know what was going on. They were testing for neuroblastoma, other types of cancers. They ended up doing a genetic blood test, and he came back with a really rare genetic syndrome on chromosome 1, and the only one in Australia at the time. And, we were paying for these consults with private geneticists to find out more and work out what the best options were and treatment options, or if there was any information out there that we needed to know about. And no one opened their mouth. And I was like, that's your grandson sick in hospital. And they're doing genetic blood tests that take 6 weeks to get results. And their original differential diagnosis was not a great outcome. Like, our son wouldn't be here by the time he was 18, was kind of that prognosis. And luckily it's not that. But we waited 6 weeks to find out if it was going to be that. And no one, that was about 7 years ago now, and no one put their hand up and said, hey, this is some information.
And that just shows you the level of suppression that existed between, within both of your parents. And I kind of want to go back to, I think I was meant to ask this when you were talking about your dad finding out that you guys knew. Like, what did you see in him? I guess let's stick with him. Did it seem like he was relieved that you had known? Did it seem like maybe there was shame tied to it? Like, what kind of emotions were the first that you noticed in him once this all came to light?
Yeah, definitely. I definitely shame. Mum had said she was kind of open to telling people and having it common knowledge, but her and dad had a conversation where dad, finding out you're infertile, masculinity, shame, all that kind of stuff, especially back in those days when things aren't as common knowledge or talked about. Apparently he had said that he would like it to be kept a secret, and mum made a pact with him about that. And dad doesn't remember that, but dad's memory is not great. And again, suppression, like trauma, you block things out to deal with it. So yeah, and mum kept her word on that until, I guess, when I asked if I was adopted, and it might have rattled her, or it would have rattled her. But I do think, there was definitely shame, and there was definitely one of his big things, hey, Benny, was like, how are his friends and family going to feel when they find out, knowing that he kept this a secret from them as well? Are people going to think he's got other secrets that he's keeping, and, he's an honest man, and now they'll think he's not honest? And for mum, I don't know, like with mum, I think it was a relief that we now knew, but there's also a lot of emotions that kind of came flooding back to her fertility journey, I believe. And that's another thing in hindsight, is like, with my work as an acupuncturist, I deal with a lot of fertility issues with patients. And when mum had said, she tried conceiving for a few years, and she had numerous tests and stuff, she said, I never kind of hounded her for more information on that, which was bizarre to me, because anyone else, I'd be like, oh, what tests and what did it happen? And it wasn't like I consciously didn't ask her. I think subconsciously my soul was like, not now. You're not to know now.
Yeah.
We were supposed to
Yeah.
find out when we were supposed to find out. But I think for Mum, it's probably been the hardest because I think she consciously knew she was suppressing a lot. That's my view. What do you think, Benny?
Mhm.
Yeah, I agree with you there with regards to mum and dad as well. Yeah, I think dad found it quite hard, Nick. Like I tried to think of it from his point of view, you know, and with regards to being infertile, and it would have been a bit of a, yeah, felt some kind of shame back in the 80s or 70s, late 70s and 80s, you know, like it was a time of masculinity in Australia, you know, men were men, you know, and if they couldn't father a child, I think that kind of takes away from their masculinity in a sense. So I think that did probably affect my dad in a sense. When it did come out, yeah, as Katie said, didn't really want to speak with it apart from anyone outside of anyone outside of our family. It was only to be spoken about, you know, kind of with our core family, Katie, myself, our partners, and then him and his partner and mum and her partner. And that's all as far as he wanted to go.
Mm-hmm.
At first, I was very much like that as well. But then I realized that part of my healing journey was to tell my story. And I purveyed that to him. I said, look, you know, I need to speak about this with some friends. I'm sorry, I can't keep this to myself anymore, but just, I'm letting you know because out of respect, Dad, you know, like I'm not coming to you for permission or anything like that. It's out of respect. So I had a chat to a few of my friends. I'd spoken to my stepbrother about it and we'd told him, and it was about a month after my stepbrother had found out. I don't think he'd spoken to his mum or my dad. And yeah, my dad said, "Oh, speaking to your stepmum, and we're gonna tell your stepbrother about it." And I said, "Oh, I've been there, done that." I said, "I'm good. He's one of my good mates. He's a part of my support network." And I said, about a month ago, I said I called him up and had a really big chat with him about it all. And yeah, it was he was a bit shocked. It didn't change anything. It's it is what it is. So, but it was and then like the 12-month, I've just come up to the 12-month anniversary, Nick, and I wanted to write a post about it, you know, just a brief summary of my story over the past 12 months, because I suppose I was never super active on social media, but, you know, I'd put up a few posts here and there, and I'd gone quite inactive in the last 12 months with regards to things. And also, I feel that by telling my story, I'm making more people aware of, you know, the situation of donor conceived people. A lot of people don't understand that. I'd probably spent about a month and a half leading up to June the 9th this year, writing my story out. And about a week and a half prior to that, I'd gone and spoken to my mum about my want to publish this story. And same thing with my dad. My dad was quite shaken by it. He was a bit worried. He doesn't understand social media too much. He doesn't do tech. You know, the telly's about it, and maybe an email through the computer. When I say television, I should say TV. But yeah, maybe the computer, and that's about the extent of his tech. So he was worried about if I posted this on Facebook, where it was going to go. And I just explained to him, I said, look, I do have some of your friends on Facebook. So if you haven't spoken to them about this, they may find out this way, but I'm not asking you for permission, Dad. I'm just telling you as a courtesy, you know, and to be respectful that this is something that I need to do. And I think Katy did something similar as well. She felt that as part of the journey, it was something that she did. And I think it was about a week after I put the post up, Katy put a post up as well, just kind of saying, hey, this is what I've been through for the past 12 months. And felt good to get it out there. I got some contact from a couple of people that I knew. I never realized one of them was adopted. And I suppose adoption is very similar, not the same, but similar in certain aspects with regards to their journey of finding who their parents are, etc. So yeah, it was nice to have had someone reach out and just go, yeah, I kind of know what you're feeling because I've kind of been through the same thing. So no, it was good, and it felt relieving. Like it felt like a big weight had been taken off my shoulders, and I turned a massive corner writing that and pressing that post button and letting it know it's out there in the world now. You know, like I feel I can speak openly about it. I want to advocate more for this space here in Australia. Try and lead to change. At the moment, we're having a bit of a rapid review with regards to laws here in Australia federally, because there was a couple of mix-ups at an IVF clinic in Melbourne. Pretty sure it was Melbourne.
Yeah.
But yeah, so it's been brought to the forefront of the media here in Australia at the moment, and I just think, telling my story and trying to get it out there is just, it's another person just trying to raise awareness, and that's helping me move forward as well.
Right. Yeah, there's a lot of relatable bits in there and overlaps with my own journey with, putting this part of me out there openly, the reluctance, particularly with my dad early on, and watching him evolve into someone now who, is my biggest cheerleader in a lot of ways, So it's cool to see, because we're forced to evolve as donor conceived people. Like, we have to figure out how to sit with this, but the people closest to us, normally our parents and our family, like, they can be along for the ride too. And to watch them evolve with us, and I'm fortunate that I've been able to see that in my own parents, that is strengthening. All of this has kind of brought us even closer together. I guess on that note, I'm curious, the two of you having gone down this path side by side, how have you seen your relationship change since, let's call it, the before times and the after times?
Well, for Benny and I, we've always been close. We've always just got on. We're very different in a lot of ways, but we've always just understood each other. And so I wouldn't have thought we could get any closer, but we have. I feel like the level of, and Benny's really emotional, wears his heart on his sleeve, will tell you exactly how he feels. Like, I love that about him. And when him and I chat, it's always so deep. And it was obviously, 2 or 3 hours every night for a long time there that we were chatting. So we got to get each other's deeper thoughts out on the table that maybe we wouldn't have ever got to that level of, when we were children, this happened, and and just all these different things that we ended up unpacking together, that we've become even closer. And, I never thought that would be possible. That's what I feel.
Completely agree with that statement that, we've just grown closer. Yeah, I don't know. We were full siblings for 43 or 42. How old were you, Katy, when you found out? 40 for 40 years of our lives, and then we all of a sudden we're half siblings, and okay, it's just a term on a piece of paper at the end of the day.
Yeah.
And it is, technically it's true. We're biologically only half related, not fully related, but I think this has brought us way closer than what we would have ever been if we never found this out. I kind of feel like Katy's my one and a half sister now. Like, she's more than, she's way more than like what we were before, and it's amazing.
Yeah.
Like, I've grown to know her a lot more in the last 12 months, and we are a massive support network to each other, and I'm so grateful that I've had someone like my sister to stand beside me on this journey, because it has been quite tough and troubling. But to know that, she's been my little rock in a sense, my wife as well, and my daughter, like, don't get me wrong, they've been amazing support as well, but they don't get it from our perspective. And to have someone that is essentially walking through it with almost identical perspective as you, that you can just bounce things off, you can just open up to with no fear of judgment, it's amazing. And our relationship as brother and sister will only ever get stronger from here on in.
Yeah, for sure. And I think, Nick, you said about being forced to evolve, and there's a story that kind of, whenever I tell it, everyone kind of like laughs, is on the Tuesday, I remember having a healing session with a lady, and she was like, "Oh, I've cleared all this stuff." And, she said the words of, "Now you're going to be ready to evolve." She said something like that. And I was like, "Oh, okay, righto."
Mm-hmm.
And then the next day I was in the kitchen with my husband and my best mate. We're having a glass of wine. And I was like, considering our parents split up early, and, there was no real childhood trauma stuff that came through, a bit of domestic violence stuff that my brother and I had witnessed at a young age with a boyfriend of my mum. And, I said, apart from that, nothing really big, has came up in that session. I'm pretty unscathed, no child trauma here. And I was like, cheers to that, with my best mate, my husband, sip of rosé. Anyway, that was the Wednesday. And then Saturday, it was like the universe was like, no childhood trauma, boom, and I often say to my friends, and even to Timmy, my husband, I'm like, man, if this is what evolving is, like, let me go back and rewrite the contract before I came down, because no more evolving.
Yeah, you hit your quota on that, I guess.
Yeah, I'm done.
That's funny. Awesome. Well, this is a beautiful story. I love seeing, two siblings that have walked side by side along this very unpredictable path that donor conceived people are, forced to go down. And it's cool that this is the result of it all, that you've become even closer and have embraced it too, right? Like, you're not looking away from it. You're exploring all the highs and lows that come along with it. So
Yeah.
very cool. Any other bits that you want to add before we wrap up that maybe we haven't touched on yet or didn't, unpack enough when we were talking about it before?
I probably only have 2 points. I think one is, anyone listening to this that's donor conceived, I remember my husband saying to me something about, like, don't let this make you bitter. He's the level-headed one of the relationship. And I was like, yeah, that's true. And I remember reading Dani Shapiro's book, Inheritance, and she wrote in it, you get to choose. It can be horrible, wonderful, or it can be beautiful, horrible, or it can be beautiful, wonderful. But you get to choose. And I remember getting those two kind of conversations and reading that book within like a week of each other. And then I ended up going to get a tattoo that said in Spanish, trust the path, because I kept flicking back to negative things, which is not me normally, rehashing stuff that I needed to really like have a reminder that I could visually look at each day to be like, this is the path you're supposed to, I believe we all have a path. We all know it from the beginning, and this is my path and it's for a reason. And that I need to remember, and even one of the sisters said in the chat, there's so many blessings. I hope you can come to a point where you can see all the blessings. And I'm there now, but I just remember, like, I need that reminder to be like, this is our story and our journey, and I can look at all the good that comes out of it as well. And I think the other thing that I wanted to say as well is that, like, it's such a donor conception in Australia is such a social, like, bioethical issue from the ones who were donating a lot, and everyone kind of grew up in this small area that there's could be half siblings out there that have dated or married, and it has happened. But then there's all the first cousins that are below that. So that becomes a big issue, and, genetically. And I feel like if there's any parents out there that have not told their children, that's the thing as a parent now, kind of like, how can you kiss your child goodnight every night and know you're withholding this truth from them? I don't understand that. I don't think I ever will. But I do see where it would come from. But yeah, I think Ben and I are real big advocates for, if you're out there and you have children that are donor conceived and don't know, like, please, as hard as it will be, tell them. Just tell them, please.
Yes, totally agree. And it's funny you bring up the Dani Shapiro book, because not 2 minutes before we hopped on this call, that book was delivered to my house because I've been meaning to read it. So I'll be diving into that tonight.
Great.
Yes,
You'll enjoy
it
because it's a good read.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
Ben, any closing thoughts on your end?
Look, just push.
Beautifully said. Cool. So Ben, we were only 2 minutes over your requested time, so I think we did pretty good there. So I am going to stop the recording for now.